All right. Can you still hear me? Awesome. All right. So I'm James Gittens. I'm with the Office of Veteran Success. This is for Veterans Day, and right now we have Nelson Thomas with us, and we're going to ask you to give a verbal confirmation that it's okay to utilize this recording in order to use for Veterans Day. Is that all right?
I'm happy to do anything for you.
Thank you. And then can I also have your permission if for my purposes outside the office, I would like to use this recording for veteran research and also community research. Is that all right with you?
That'll be fine.
Thank you, sir. All right. So Thomas, take me down your history, your legacy in terms of where you started off from and how service, I'm asking really, has service always been something that's impacted you prior to being in the military? And then when did you join the military? How has that really affected you?
You want me to start now?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, I began as a child. I hadn't changed much. I'm pretty childish. It was World War II, and my father, he was a medical doctor. He had been drafted in the military, and he was on his way to Fort Bend, Georgia. My mother, who was an English and math teacher, was traveling with him. And when they got to Jacksonville, she said, Tom, his name was Tom too, he said, you better stop. So they pulled in the hospital, and out I came. So I was almost a Georgia boy, but I ended up a Florida cracker. The next person that was influential in me joining the military was my grandfather, my dad's father. His name was Nick Nelson, and he was a veterinarian in the Spanish-American War. I guess horses were the main form of transportation there because if you remember your history, it was made famous by Teddy Roosevelt, and the war lasted about one day. So the next person that played a part in my approach to the military was my Uncle Red, Lieutenant Leslie Haviland. He was a lieutenant commander in the Coast Guard, commanding officer in Ketchikan, Alaska. He was a real close member of our family. We met at Christmas and those times, but I guess when I got in best with him, well, to start off with him, before he was in Ketchikan, he was on a ship, and the incident that happened on the ship was it caught fire. And of course, my aunt was in tears, but what had happened was when he gave all the survivors on the ship, he forgot to include his own. The other story was that before the fire, he had a beautiful head of red hair, and after it was over, his hair had all turned gray. Well, when he was in Alaska, he invited me to spend the summer, but I declined. The next summer, I was at Jesuit high school, and I failed Latin. I had to take it over the summer, or I couldn't go back to school. My parents were on vacation. So I went to Washington, D.C., where he was stationed at that time, and stayed with him for the summer. And I really got to love him then. He really had was the respect the men had for him. It was just unbelievable. Anyway, he was the one that convinced me that I want to be an officer in the military. So when I went to school and I joined ROTC, and I got Best Dressed Award, but I found out that the highest I could go there would be an E2 when I entered the service, and since I wanted to be an officer, I quit and played football. My senior year in high school, the recruiter came, talked to my class, and he told me that if I joined the Marine Corps, that they would send me to college, and when I graduated, I could become an officer. So I went to Jacksonville and I signed up on what was called a 128 delay plan. You got to home for 121 days, tell everybody goodbye, pack, and then come back and sign up. Well, when I got back, I ended up spending 121 days trying to figure out how to keep from going. My mom had talked to some of her friends, and they said as long as I liked hunting and fishing, that I'd do all right, and I did. But my girlfriend said she wasn't going to wait on me, and I hadn't expected that. And so I was anyway. I read the contract that I signed, and in it, the clause I read was, in lieu of Marine Corps Reserve, I would sign for 4 years of active duty. So I decided, well, I'll go back, but I ain't going to sign. So when I got back, I told him what had happened. I didn't tell him what had happened. I just said, I don't want to sign. He said, well, you got to sign. I said, well, I'm not. He says, if you don't, we'll send you anyway. I said, well, just go ahead and do that then. Well, I wasn't sure what he could do. When he came back and offered me to go for 3 years and 4 years, I signed up. I know now that if I hadn't, I would have had to gone to boot camp and the advanced infantry training, and then I would have had to start working active duty for 6 months. But then I would have gone home and spent the rest of my time in reserves during the summer. But anyway, I was glad that I joined up, and I still make mistakes for making a decision too quickly and not consulting God first. It was interesting because we had an indoctrination speech, class, and was in speech the first time I went up there, and they made me go back through the second time. At the end, they always had this where they did a speech, and they said, all right, if you're not absolutely certain this is what you want to do, you get up and walk out that door. Nobody's going to stop you. Then he said, Nelson, you're in. So from there, I was sent to Paris Island. Got on train, and I met up with a girl that had signed up the same time I had at a different time, and we talked about how we were going to get together after we got to Paris Island. Of course, that never happened. When we arrived, the drill instructors came on board, physically grabbed us and pulled us outside, slapped us against the wall, searched us. Then we were put into a formation, told to watch the man's head and neck in front of us, and that lasted for for 6 months, yes. So anyway, we from there, they took us in formation, they marched us to a shower, they stripped us, sent all of our belongings home. They gave us a scrub brush, a bucket, 3 uniforms, and a rifle, M1 Grand. It was an excellent rifle. And they taught us how to clean it, and it was interesting. Then they taught us how Marine Corps regulations apply. They had us at the foot of our racks with our rifles, and he read from the manual. He says, under no circumstances will you disassemble the trigger symbol unless there is an officer present. Everyone understand that? And everybody said, yes, sir. He says, "Does anyone see an officer?" Everyone said, "No, sir." He said, "Then disassemble that trigger assembly and do it now." Everyone said, "Yes, sir." We were, the Marine Corps is aware that we were to be treated as one, because in combat, if one person makes a mistake, the others may suffer too. And so when one person made a mistake, we all either did push-ups or ran. And for the more severe cases, the drill instructor picked out the strongest, biggest, and made them squad leaders. And they would go into the bathroom, and their squad leader would go in there and give them instruction. We were a non-speaking platoon, and so that meant we couldn't talk to anyone except the drill instructor. And after we had been there about 3 months, we won a field day. So the drill instructor called us to attention, then said, "Parade rest," and said, "You will talk." Well, everybody was silent. And then he said, "You will talk or you will run." One thing, though, they say you always remember your drill instructor. And although I did my best, I got hit once. But I remember one day on the bayonet field, him telling us, "You look to your right and look to your left, because one of you is not going to live through this. We want to improve your chances." And I really believe he had my best interests at heart, so he was my main motivator for staying in the military. From Parris Island, we went through advanced infantry training, which is try to show you to make the impossible possible, like carrying a full transport pack for a 3-mile run just and make record time. I was training with a company, and when we hit the field on the last day, there were just a few of us. I was sick too, but I didn't want to have to go back through it. From there, I was sent to Camp Pendleton, and that was a good thing. That's where I met all the people. But anyway, I was able to do my Liberty in San Clemente, which is the surfing capital of the world, and also the other place we'd go to San Diego, or we would go to Hollywood. Everybody there loved military men. On Christmas or Thanksgiving, they would call the USO and invite you to their house for Christmas or dinner. The thing that helped me the most in the military from that part was the active religious. There's a saying in the military, there are no atheists in foxholes. When the ground shakes, you're going to look up. The first person I was impressed with was my first lieutenant, who I really thought a lot of. And I saw him come out of a crowd and serve as an altar boy at a daily mass. I had never seen that done before. From there, it was a short time, and Cuban crisis came to be. It was a lot different than it is now. I think now, excuse me, the enemy knows what we're going to do before we do it. But at that time, it wasn't that way. I volunteered to go. They told me to make a field transport and to take a bus to the airport. I stopped at the base store, and I got a portable radio. My voice is getting, I will. And on it, they were reporting that President Kennedy was returning to the White House because of a cold. Of course, we all know now that that wasn't the reason. It was because of the missile crisis, which only 90 miles off the coast of Florida. When we got to the airport, they advised that we would be loading up and that our destination would be classified. When we were arriving in Guantanamo, Cuba, they told us things were going to be pretty hot, but we thought they were going to be shooting at us. Actually, they meant that temperatures were in the 90s. Once we landed, we laid a 100-yard minefield between the base and the Cuban territory, and we dug foxholes for each of our four. There were 4 men assigned to each fire team, and we dug a foxhole for each one. Then they assigned a sentry to walk along the path between Cuba and the minefield. They said when he had a radio contact, when he could no longer return the contact, they would assume he was dead and would expect the Cuban to be on their way. Our main strategy was to drop paratroopers behind Castro's troops, and then we would attack from the front. I could pick up radio stations with the thing I had, and one night, one of my fire team reported that Castro was making a speech. And in the speech, he said, "We've had thousands of men who want guns. They have those guns. We're going to stamp them out like cockroaches." I remember the word La Cucaracha. The next night, they told us we would be going over the fence. And I said, "Oh, that's not true." I said, "They just gave us beer." The guy said, "Well, why do you think they gave you the beer?" I thought I was going to die. God, please die. The next day, we pulled out with no explanation. Everybody believed that they had removed Russia's ships from the harbor. Some of the people went to Jamaica for vacation. I went back through the Panama Canal. When we got back to Pendleton, they were just beginning the Vietnamese War. We were fighting like advisors alongside the troops, but it hadn't officially been declared war. I was sent to Okinawa and went through guerrilla warfare training. And then I was trained on a 106 recoilless rifle. The interesting about it was an anti-tank gun. And of course, we were trained that if we fired and missed, that it would be a few seconds before they would have a round on our waist. So we always had to pick out a location that we could move to as soon as we fired. The thing about the gun was it had gas. The reason they call it was recoilless is because gases escaping out the back would kill for 100 foot. And in training, they would put an orange crate back there and it would disappear. But they say when the Japanese captured the weapon, they didn't know about going to stand alongside. They loaded it up and they killed the people behind the gun, so they loaded it up and ran around the front. I was trained. We did the transfer from an amphibious unit to helicopters. And so I was trained on a helicopter landing team and put on the Iwo Jima, which is the same ship that picked up the Sputnik, if you're fine. And my job was to move troops and the supplies to the trouble spots in the world. Excuse me. The first time we took up the copter, we started seeing holes in the bottom of the copter, and then we realized they were shooting at us. After that, there was armor plated. When I had finished 3 years of time by this time, and they offered me a convenience early discharge to go back to school. And so I took that. As a result of the support and my past in the Marine Corps, I was able to return and they would pay for my school. There were a couple of people that had gone to high school with me and they were in the military too, so we all carpooled and went to begin at a junior college. There was a coach there. Excuse me.
What was the name of that college? Do you recall the name of the college?
St. Petersburg Junior College. It's a university now or college now.
Wow.
And there, I believe the coach was a military man too, but I don't know what branch. But he taught me how to study, and I started making A's. From there, I went to St. Leo's College, and because of my experience with the Marine Corps, I was able to get a position driving school bus and also as an advisor in the dormitories. After a year, I had not made enough requirements to come to the University of South Florida, and here I got my bachelor's degree in distributive education. That, and then I was given a fellowship here at USF teaching distributive education. And from there, I got the first position at Dade County Public School System. I went there and I interviewed, and they told me they wanted me to come and visit with the faculty and people to come to events and see how I got along with everybody. One night I was at a basketball game and a teacher came up and introduced himself, and when he found out that I was applying for the position, he told me, he says, they've already filled that. They hired some Marine.
Little did he know.
So I knew I had that. From there, I went to Miami, and because of my background in the Marine Corps, I was able to get hired on with a small North Miami Beach Police Department. And a few years, again, from my military backing, I was able to go with the Sheriff's Department. I went to Alaska because that's just the type of guy I am. But I took nursing there. And again, the VA is always ready to help you out. So I was able to get through nursing school there with honors. It was interesting though, when we first met, they had a round robin and they went around the room and everyone said that the reason they were going to nursing was because they wanted to do something a little more exciting. I was the only one that said I wanted to do something a little less exciting. After my nursing degree, which I got with honors, I was able to go to work at James A. Haley Hospital. And I tell everybody today, for a veteran, the VA is just like a mother. She provides everything that you need. Now I'm getting ready to retire, and I'm back in school now. I'm majoring in adult education here at USF with an emphasis on library science and health. And the veteran success has made things a lot easier, and they continue to. I tell everybody now at the VA and every place I run into, get as much education as you can. Join the military. You will be rewarded, and it will reward you.
That's amazing. I mean, that roller coaster of just what inspired you and how that has just really transpired, with your uncle, into how you have your own unique experience. with your drill instructor who clearly cared for you. But as we both know, it's a different kind of care, is it not? Like it's a different kind of care. But you know, there's a form of love there, of something that's bonding that you haven't experienced before. And once it's there, it's something that can never be broken. And then it transpires into you just I mean, especially during between World War II and the Cuban Missile Crisis. You've got the Korean War. I mean, really, just been going through all those transitional periods. You decided to serve, and it's just something where it seems like it's just always inherently been in you, and to always be inquisitive, always wanting more, to do more, and see what you can do with it, and then even getting out. And I understand what trying to pick something that's not too exciting, but at least still stimulating to your mind, to where it's going to challenge you. And I've heard from the students here how challenging the nursing program is, and how challenging it is just to work in the medical field. So you still wanted to continue to serve. It's funny. It's most service members who were active duty combat arms. If they could pick another challenging or a secondary MOS, the majority of us always pick the medical field. We think it's so fascinating. Isn't that something? We think being a medic would be fascinating. I do too. That was one thing I always picked myself. But your service, is a testament to your identity, what it means to serve, and your family's service, and the history of what it means to you all, and then your continued service afterwards with your education. I really see you just want to have the ability to help, and has yes, carrying a rifle when we're young is, it's part of it, and it's fun, it's cool at first, but when it comes deep down to it, I mean, what you described to me is that service is something, that you enjoy doing, you enjoy helping, and that's at your core, and that's very beautiful. And I just thank you so much for your story. Do you have those pictures still on hand with you?
I have a few. Well, I always like to show you this picture. That's who I am. That goes up here, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Who's
Get
that?
the full picture.
Yeah, you just back it up a little bit. Okay, right there.
Alaska.
So who's that there?
That was me in Alaska, right? Okay.
Okay.
And of course, I didn't tell you before that I was raised on a farm. When in the summertime, when I would go and visit with my grandmama from the time I was about 8 years old, when she would take me out before dawn, and I learned how to milk the cows and feed the pigs and go get the cows that had got hooked up in the barbed wire. And that has made a lasting effect on my life. But when I was at her house, at her job, this is where I looked at it.
Right back, and then back it up just a little bit. Oh, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this was my grandmother.
Lovely.
This was my father. This, I don't know if I don't think you're going to be able to see that, are you?
I can see it. It's coming in very clear.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This man over here was the one I was telling you that was in the Spanish-American War. He looked like Ty Cobb. He taught me to play baseball. That's another picture of Red Haviland, and his wife must have been taking the picture. This was my grandmother. That was my mom.
Okay.
And there's another picture of my dad. Here was Red Haviland. In uniform.
Okay.
And here he is on his ship.
That's the
And
legend.
next on the ship, this is the one that caught fire. And this is the ship from a distance.
Wow. That's
This was my graduation picture. And this is the 106 rifle that I was assigned to.
that is rich history right there, Nelson. I mean,
Right.
I'm glad you're able to have that and to hold on to that, and that's got to be, is that a huge motivator for you to, at any time, things get hard on you, or, I know for me, and I don't care how old you get, sometimes classwork can be a little daunting sometimes. And just service in general. Sometimes we encounter in some moments where things get difficult. Is there any point in time where you've experienced that, and then you've had to think about your uncle as as motivation to keep going?
My life has been too quick to really start to worry about anything.
Just on to the next thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, you just keep going.
Mhm.
That's really cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this with us and with me, and trust me with your story. It's an honor, and it's a privilege. What do you plan to do with your degree you're seeking now after you retire? Is it just kind of a hobby to stay in school, or do you keep do you still plan to keep serving within the Tampa Bay community?
Well, I am blessed by God. I'm 78 years old. I get up and run every morning, do my exercises. I'm healthier than I know anybody else. I don't have anything wrong with me. Um, Hopefully, I'm going to live to 100. But when I came back to school, it was a traumatic thing. When I went to school uh, at the junior college, you had a body of knowledge. You memorized it, so I could take tape recorders and stuff like that. And as long as you could regurgitate it, you were all right. Now it's a whole different playing field. They take you into a strange environment and they give you a problem, and they somewhere in that environment you've got to find the pieces that go. So that's traumatic to somebody that comes in. So right now, with a large number of people that are losing their jobs because, like pharmacists that were trained and then they get out of school and there's no job for them, or some people are working at jobs that no longer exist. They're taken over by technology, and so they're coming back to college, and for them it's mind-boggling. And since I had to go through that, I want to be here to help those people out.
Wow, that's something, huh? That's even something I have not put much thought into, just that transitional period that you're asking each generation to go through, and how that can be so overwhelming. I mean, this is my fifth or sixth time being in school, and even from 2008 to 2000, what are we in? And 2020,
The virus, right?
it's like, and I'm my age, and I'm just like, I click on some of our stuff on the website. I'm like, this is a lot. Where did this come from? This wasn't, here 10 years ago. So I can only imagine with your rich history, and you've seen the literal, the collegiate system take form from day one in the U.S. when it becomes public or excuse me, privatized, and then how everything's transitioned. That's that's a lot. So what you're doing is a very noble task. Making sure that people have a chance at reinventing themselves and continuing to live. Even after they've already done so much, they still have so much potential. So that's beautiful. Thank you. Wow. Well, again, we'll stop it here. I'll stop the recording, but thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.